ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We have been studying here Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and we are meeting after a very big gap because we had the Shivratri and Shri Ramakrishna Tithi Puja in between. So I would like to go back a little and get connected and come back. And we have finished the reading of the first part of the book, you may say, which deals with bhakti in general. And then we have stepped into the second part, which is called Parabhakti, which we may say is the real bhakti, which starts from love of God and ends in the realization of God. So that Bhakti Yoga we have taken up, and the first chapter was named the preparatory renunciation. And we are told that in every yoga, renunciation is absolutely necessary at the starting point, though the nature of that renunciation differs. The common point is that we have to renounce our present behavior with the world. And so, we read here on page 66 of your book, the Karma Yogi's renunciation is in the shape of giving up all the fruits of his action. He is not attached to the results of his labor. He does not care for any reward here or hereafter. The Rajyogi knows that the whole of nature is intended for the soul to acquire experience, and that the result of all the experiences of the soul is for it to become aware of its eternal separateness from nature. That is the renunciation. The human soul has to understand and realize that it has been spirit and not matter, though it through eternity, and that this conjunction of it with matter is and can be only for a time. The Rajyogi learns the lesson of renunciation through his own experience of nature. The Jnana-yogi has the harshest of all renunciation to go through, as he has to realize from the very first that the whole of this solid-looking nature is all an illusion. He has to understand that all that is any kind of manifestation of power in nature belongs to the soul and not to nature. He has to know from the very start that all knowledge and all experience are in the soul and not in nature. So he has at once and by the sheer force of rational conviction to tear himself away from all bondages to nature. He lets nature and all that belongs to her go. He lets them vanish and tries to stand alone. Of all the renunciations, the most natural, so to say, is that of the Bhakti Yogi. Here, there is no violence, nothing to give up, nothing to tear off, as it were, from ourselves, nothing from which we have violently to separate ourselves. The Bhakta's renunciation is easy, smooth, flowing, and as natural as the things around us. Now, he gives example to make us understand that we see the manifestation of this sort of renunciation, although more or less in the form of caricatures every day around us. That means caricature, I love some object, then I love some other object, and the love for this object goes away. That is the caricature. But from this we see that renunciation becomes very natural. Once I love something, I give up something else. That is the renunciation. Now here, all the illusory things, all the tempting things are to be renounced, but not the force of love. That is the main natural thing. Natural thing is we have a force of love, and that is not to be given up. But that is applied to temporary things. Can we apply to God the permanent thing? That is renunciation. Renouncing the direction of the power of love, not the power of love. we have to renounce the wrong direction being given to the power of love towards petty temporary objects, and we have to give that love direction towards God, the permanent object. That is why it is called natural, because the force of love is not being given up, the direction is being changed. From this we entered the second chapter, in which this very point is elaborated. The Bhakta's renunciation results from love. Now here Swamiji is showing the force of love throughout. We read from the beginning, we see love everywhere in nature. Whatever in society is good and great and sublime is the working out of that love. Whatever in society is very bad, nay diabolical, is also the ill-directed working out of the same emotion of love. Feeling. Emotion here could be translated as feeling. The feeling of love is there. If it is rightly directed, it takes us higher. If it wrongly directed, it takes us down. But we see the same love. It is this same emotion, we may read feeling there, that gives us the pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, as well as the sort of love which goes to satisfy the lowest forms of animal passion. You understand? Conjugal love is very holy, and the animalistic love is diabolical. The feeling is the same. I am changing that word to read because in Swamiji's time that word was used. My Swamiji is using that word in that sense. I am using it as feeling. The feeling is the same, but its manifestation is different in different cases. It is the same feeling. Now Swamiji has brought the correct word. It is the same feeling of love, well or ill-directed, that impels one man to do good and to give all he has to the poor. That is also love. While it makes another man cut the throats of his brethren and take away all their possessions. Here the direction of love is towards himself. The former loves others as much as the latter loves himself. The direction of the love is bad in the case of the latter, but it is right and proper in the other case. So Swamiji is giving various examples for us to understand, and then he will bring it to God. The same fire that cooks a meal for us may burn a child, and it is no fault of the fire if it does so. The difference lies in the way in which it is used. So the faculty of love has not to be blunted. That is the main point Swamiji is deriving at. Therefore love, the intense, now love is defining, short of trying to explain what is love, which is indefinable. Therefore love, the intense longing for association, is one way in which the love is expressed. Love, the intense longing for association, the strong desire on the part of two to become one. That is the feeling of love. And it may be, after all, of all to become merged in one. That is God. So, two try to become one, or all try to become one with God. That is real love. Is being manifested everywhere in higher or lower forms as the case may be. So, higher or lower direction. Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. That is the definition of Bhakti Yoga Swamiji is giving. This higher love requires a science. Science does not mean physical science. Science means methodical approach. Please note down, the meaning of the word science here is a methodical approach. So, Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. I remember here, I might have referred to it, my Guruji, when he went to Mahapuruji, Mahapuruji told him, my child, you have to study Upanishads. He replied saying, what is the use of studying that ghata and pata, the usual philosophical terms? Is not the main thing to love God? Mahaprabhuji replied, yes, my boy, the main thing is to love God. But that love requires a science. That love requires the scripture science. And then he said, I tell you, Upanishads are the best Bhakti Shastras in the world. So he used the word Shastra, a methodical approach. Shastra means unfailing guidance. So the love requires unfailing guidance, a science. That is the word Swamiji is using here. Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. That means not how a man can love woman or so and so, so and so. That Bhakti Yoga is not dealing. It is dealing with the higher love, love for God. It shows us how to direct it. It shows us how to control it. That means not allow it to go down, not allow it to get diffused. How to manage it, how to use it, how to give it a new aim, as it were, and from it obtain the highest and the most glorious results. What is that highest and most glorious results? That is, how to make it lead us to spiritual blessedness. So final goal Swamiji is putting here as spiritual blessedness. Blessedness, not pleasure or happiness. It is blessedness, the characteristics of being bliss ourselves. How this faculty of love will lead us there is the science of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga does not say give up. It only says love, love the highest. Give up means not about the world. Bhakti Yoga does not say give up your faculty of love. Change the direction, love the highest. Highest with a capital H, it means God only. And everything low naturally falls off from Him. Once the proper object of love is found, automatically the other things will be lost. And everything low naturally falls off from Him, the object of whose love is the highest. So that is the naturalness. Now he gives a quotation, I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. The very definition of God we have seen, Sa Isha Anirvachaniya Prema Swarupa. How can I tell about God? He is the creator or what not? But He is attracting me. That is His definition. You are my love. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. What is beauty? That which experience gives joy is called beauty. Beauty or sundarata is that which when experienced, not only by seen, by experience, by any means, it gives joy inside, that is called beauty. So, God is beauty itself. What is after all really required of us in this yoga is that our thirst after the beautiful should be directed to God. In man there is a thirst after beautiful because a man seeks joy. So whatever gives him joy, he calls it beautiful. And there is a thirst to find some object of beauty. And if he finds God as the object, then his search for beauty is fulfilled, otherwise not. Now gives example. What is the beauty in the human face, in the sky, in the stars and in the moon? It is only the partial apprehension of the real, all-embracing divine beauty. Why something appears beautiful? Because God is manifested there. So if something beautiful, then why not love God Himself, who is the most beautiful? Not only most beautiful as comparatively, but He is the source of all beauty in the world. There is an example for this. Swami Vivekananda was traveling along with his disciples and on a ship, and the ship was sailing through the Mediterranean. And because of the starry night, they all went to the deck. And Swamiji saw that everybody is stunned by looking at the sky. Then Swamiji said, if nature is so beautiful, think of the reality behind. So this nature is only a reflection of the reality behind. If the nature is so beautiful, think of the reality behind. That is the whole thing to be done in Bhakti Yoga. It is only the partial apprehension of the real, all-embracing divine beauty. He is shining, everything shines. It is through His light that all things shine. This is from Kathopanishad. Take this high position of bhakti which makes you forget at once all your little personalities. So not only the objects are forgotten, our I itself is forgotten. Take yourself away from all the world's little selfish clingings. Because the man loves himself, man loves his own body, his own mind, and that which satisfies the body and mind, he loves the people. But if this love can be directed to God, you get the highest result, and it will automatically, your love for body, friends and mind will drop down. Take yourself away from all the world's little selfish clingings. Do not look upon humanity as the center of all your human and higher interests. So humanity is not the higher interest. Higher interest is God. And because God is in the man, so we love man also. Stand as a witness, as a student, and observe the phenomena of nature. Have the feeling of personal non-attachment with regard to man. Don't get attached to a particular man as a person. And see how this mighty feeling of love is working itself out in the world. Sometimes a little friction is produced, but that is only in the course of the struggle to attain the higher real love. Sometimes there is a little fight or a little fall, but it is all only by the way. So do not care for these things. Stand aside and freely let these frictions come. You feel the frictions only when you are in the current of the world. But when you are outside of it, simply as a witness and as a student, you will be able to see that there are millions and millions of channels in which God is manifesting Himself as love. Millions and millions of channels. That means through, as in the Vibhuti Yoga, through many things we can love God. He is giving the Upanishadic quotation for that. Wherever there is any bliss, even though it's the most sensual of things, there is a spark of the eternal bliss which is the Lord Himself. Swami Vivekananda has seen in Sri Ramakrishna and in his own life later on that how everything is a manifestation of God. Even in the lowest kinds of attraction, there is the germ of divine love. One of the names of the Lord in Sanskrit is Hari. And this means that He attracts all things to Himself. That is the meaning of the word Hari. His is in fact the only attraction worthy of human hearts. Because that is permanent, that is real, because that is all pervading. Every other attraction is only the reflection. Who can attract a soul really? Soul means here the spirit, the human soul, the I, consciousness. Who can attract the consciousness? Not a dead dull matter, but consciousness only. Only He. Do you think dead matter can truly attract the soul? It never did and never will. So these are the matters of understanding. When you see a man going after a beautiful face, do you think that it is the handful of arranged material molecules which really attract the man? Not at all. Behind those material particles there must be and is. Must be, that is analytically, inference. And is a fact of experience. And is the play of divine influence and divine love. So, the love for God being reflected in something else, that is what is happening in the world. The ignorant man does not know it, but yet consciously or unconsciously he is attracted by it, and it alone. It is the love of God. So even the lowest forms of attraction derive their power from God Himself. None, O beloved, ever loved the husband for the husband's sake. It is the Atman, the Lord who is within, for whose sake the husband is loved. This is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya teaching Maitreyi. Loving wives may know this or they may not. It is true all the same. Truth is truth, whether you experience it or not, you know it or not. None, O beloved, ever loved the wife for the wife's sake, but it is the self in the wife that is loved. Similarly, no one loves a child or anything else in the world except on account of him who is within. So man does not know that. The Lord is the great magnet, and we are all like iron filings. We are being constantly attracted by Him, and all of us are struggling to reach Him. All this struggling of ours in this world is surely not intended for selfish ends. So we do not understand. We struggle for selfish ends, but it does not satisfy us till the end. If the struggle is for the highest goal, for God, then only it meets its success. Fools do not know what they are doing. The work of their life is, after all, to approach the great magnet. All the tremendous struggling and fighting in life is intended to make us go to Him ultimately and be one with Him. Not only attracted, but then we get lost in Him because of that attraction. The Bhakti Yogi, however, knows the meaning of life's struggle. So common man does not know the struggle. Bhakti Yogi knows that this is the meaning of my struggle. He understands it. He has passed through a long series of these struggles and knows what they mean, and earnestly desires to be free from the friction thereof. So my selfishness and your selfishness, that produces a friction. Now my selfishness will get absorbed. If I love God, there will be no friction. Free from the friction thereof. He wants to avoid the clash and go direct to the center of all attraction. So when you understand the real center of attraction, that is what happens to the Bhakti Yogi, the great Hari. This is the renunciation of the Bhakta. So all lower things drop down. That is what Swamiji is wanting to tell us. Once you understand this, very naturally the force of love, which is very natural, is going towards God, everything becomes drop. That is the renunciation. This mighty attraction in the direction of God makes all other attractions vanish for him. Sri Ramakrishna's expression is Anurag Vag. The love for God is like a tiger which swallows the smaller animals of the forest. This mighty infinite love of God which enters his heart leaves no place for any other love to live there. How can it be otherwise? Bhakti fills his heart with the divine waters of the ocean of love, which is God himself. There is no place there for little love. That is to say, the Bhakta's renunciation is that vairagya or non-attachment for all things that are not God, which results from anurag or great attachment to God. Because of anurag only vairagya has come. Because of the love of God, other loves are dropping down. Without this, bhakti cannot grow. I want to worship God and I want to enjoy the things of the world, cannot happen. This is the ideal preparation for the attainment of the supreme bhakti. So the bhakti will grow, become supreme when we understand that let the lower loves go. When this renunciation comes, the gate opens for the soul to pass through and reach the lofty regions of supreme devotion or parabhakti. So that is the supreme devotion or parabhakti. Then it is that we begin to understand what parabhakti is. And the man who has entered into the inner shrine of the parabhakti alone has the right to say that all forms and symbols are useless to him as aids to religious realization. So in the previous part we had seen all symbols are necessary, forms are necessary till the living love grows. And when the living love grows, then we can say these are not necessary. Not before that. Before we get any experience, we cannot say that. He alone has attained that supreme state of love commonly called the brotherhood of man. Another aspect of this love is that universal love grows in him. Because he loves God, because God is in every being, so he loves every being as form of God, and that is how the universal love, unselfish only, universal love grows in him. Brotherhood of man. The rest only talk. So, we talk of brotherhood of man, but if there is no attraction to our real nature, if there is no attraction to God, the reality of the world, then this is only superficial talk. He sees no distinction. The mighty ocean of love has entered into him. Ocean of love has entered into him. Why it is ocean? Because it is for infinite God. And he sees not man in man, but beholds his beloved everywhere. Through every face shines to him his Hari. He can see that. The light in the sun or the moon is all his manifestation. Even sun and moon are only God's manifestation, the light. Whenever there is beauty or sublimity, what is the difference between beauty and sublimity? Two words Swamiji has used. Yes, please sing. Beauty we already defined. That which gives joy is beauty. Now out of this joy what happens? Suppose we see the rose flower. We are attracted. We pluck it, smell it and throw it away. That means if we try to enjoy the beauty, it is spoiling. But when we see a rose flower, if we think, oh, it could be so nicely given to God. Even higher point, Swamiji created the Ramakrishna Mission Sevashram in Kashi, and there the flowers are already offered to God, the patients. Now Himalayas. The Pandavas were in the foothills of Himalayas. And Draupadi is asking Yudhishthir, that why do you love God? What does God give you? Yudhishthira replied, I am not a businessman in the field of love. See the Himalayas, what do they give me? But because they are glorious, I love them. No, God is the most glorious, so I love Him. That was the reply. So that Swamiji is bringing here. This is called sublimity. It gives joy and it raises the mind higher. It gives joy is common, bhakti, beauty and sublimity. But that giving joy leads to enjoyment and falling down, or the mind gets higher, goes towards God. That is sublimity. Sublimity is that beauty which raises a man higher. Through every face shines to him the light. Whenever there is beauty or sublimity, to him it is all his. Such bhaktas are still living. The world is never without them. So don't think it is impossible. Though rare, though difficult, though not ordinary man does not do it, but such people are living. The world is never without them. Such, though bitten by a serpent, only say that a messenger came to them from their beloved. This is about Pawari Baba. Somebody had met Pawari Baba. Once a serpent bit Pawari Baba, he became unconscious. And when he became conscious, he said, a messenger had come from my beloved. So this Swamiji has actually seen. And she is telling that such people exist. Such men alone have the right to talk of universal brotherhood, because otherwise universal brotherhood from outside it cannot be made. They feel no resentment. Their minds never react in the form of hatred or jealousy. The hatred or jealousy. The external, the sensuous has vanished from them forever. How can they be angry when through their love they are always able to see the reality behind the scenes? So reality behind the scenes is God. Now, next chapter. The naturalness of Bhakti Yoga and its central secret. So naturalness, Swamiji has been talking about in relation to renunciation. Naturalness, Swamiji is now talking because this love is present in every man. So it is natural. And that is its central secret. Let us see what Swamiji is telling. He starts with a quotation. Those who with constant attention always worship you, and those who worship the undifferentiated, the absolute, of these who are the greater yogis, Arjuna asked of Shri Krishna. This is the 12th chapter of the Gita. The connection is like this. In the 11th chapter, Arjuna has seen Shri Krishna's Vishwarupa. So he knows that is called the personal God. Now, and Bhagavan has ended that chapter by the one shloka which Shankaracharya has said this is the substance of the whole Gita from practical point of view. And what is that? Be devoted to me. Mad bhakto, madmana bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mam namaskuru, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yasya mameti pandava. So love me, don't hate anybody, you will definitely come to me. So the meaning is that through love for God, you will reach the goal of life. Now, this is evidently what we call bhakti or the saguna worship. Swamiji in the beginning has told us, remember, Brahman are not two, but for love's sake, we adopt the Brahman sagun form. So that is this. Now, Arjuna, instead of following that, a common human frailty comes into him. It is there. And that is comparison. We see various people following various paths, and two types of reaction come in us. He is superior, why should I not do like that? Or mine is superior, everybody should like that. So this comparison itself is wrong. So Arjuna is asking that what you have told I understand, and that is my path also I understand. But what about those who worship only the Nirgun? So that is the question, let us understand. Those, and here Swamiji is going to prove the naturalness and central secret. Those who with constant attention always worship you, and those who worship the undifferentiated, the absolute, that is the description of the Nirguna. Of these, who are the greatest yogis? Arjuna asked of Shri Krishna. The answer was, those who, concentrating their minds on me, worship me with eternal constancy and are endowed with the highest faith, they are my best worshippers. They are the greatest yogis. Now understand? Shri Krishna is not comparing at all. Shri Krishna is not comparing between Nirgun and Sagun at all. He is telling that those who worship me with, that is the important point, the difference between the first sloka and second. Those who concentrating their minds on me, worship me with eternal constancy and are endowed with the highest faith. Endowed with the highest faith means that this will give me everything. So they do not think of other things. That makes them great. It is not a comparison between Nirgun and Sagun. But within Sagun Bhakti, if you think, oh, Nirgun, then your mind is fractionally divided. But if you put full faith that, oh, this is my path, then that is better. That is what Shri Krishna is trick in explaining. He does not distinguish between the two paths. I will give an example. Now we are traveling by a car, and say from, you are approaching, say, you take an example, Bombay to Pune. Now in between you see the road divided like this, and the signboard has fallen. So you do not know which road. There, in the hut, there is a hut between the junction of the roads. So the motorman feels that this hut man will tell me. So he calls him and asks him, which road goes to Pune? The man in the hut looks at him, top to bottom, and said, my grandfather lived here, my father lived here, I am living here. No road goes anywhere. Then the man became little upset. I want to go to Pune. Or like that you tell me. You want to go, road will not go. If you walk on this road, also will reach Pune. If you walk on this road or go by motor on this road, also will reach Pune. This road goes via this road goes via this. You choose. Understand? So that is what happens in the world. Instead of walking our path, we compare. And this has destroyed civilization after civilization. And so, God's way of telling is that if you are going on this path, go with full faith. Don't think of the other path. So that is what he has replied. He has not compared between the two paths. Those that worship the Absolute, the indescribable, the undifferentiated, the omnipresent, the unthinkable, the all-comprehending, the immovable and the eternal. So, what is the answer? About the Nirguna Bhaktas, he is describing what is Nirguna Brahma and how are they, what are they, and what is their path. Without thinking, how can you compare? So, Arjuna has said, undifferentiated absolute. Sri Krishna says, absolute, indescribable, undifferentiated, omnipresent, unthinkable, the all-comprehending, the immovable and the eternal. So, beyond everything, one point. Secondly, by controlling the play of their organs, so if you can control all your organs, then talk of that path, not otherwise. And having the conviction of sameness in regard to all things, samabuddhi. That also a bhakta, sagun bhakta does not have in the beginning. But the nirguna people's characteristics is being told. They have the saguna buddhi, samabuddhi. They know God is in all. And having they also being engaged in doing good to all beings. This is another thing. The nirguna bhaktas sarva bhuta hite rataha. Example is given. In the Leela Prasanga of the Great Master, when Sri Ramakrishna visited Kashi, he met Trilinga Swami. And Trilinga Swami was lying on his hand. He was not even talking. He was immersed in the Nirguna Brahma. And we find the next line, by his inspiration, a ghat was being built for people to take bath. So the mind is constantly engaged in doing good to others. If not physically, then mentally. If he is not digging, he has inspired people to do so. That is the sign of, so a different set of people is described. If you are like that, then you can go by that path. And where do they go? That is the main thing. About avatar or incarnation, he is both Sagun Brahma and Nirgun Brahma. So where are those people who are following Nirgun Brahma go? Come to me alone. So the end point is the same. But to those whose minds have been devoted to the unmanifested absolute, the difficulty of the struggle along the way is much greater. The difficulty is there, even for the Sagun Brahma people, but much greater difficulty there. For it is indeed with great difficulty that the path of the unmanifested absolute is trodden by any embodied being. That means so long as you have body consciousness, that is impossible. So he has explained the other side instead of comparing. Those who having offered up all their work unto me with entire reliance on the other side now, Sagun Bhaktas. Those who having offered up all their work unto me with entire reliance on me, meditate on me and worship me without any attachment to anything else, them I soon lift up from the ocean of ever-recurring births and deaths, as their mind is wholly attached to me. Another important thing is being told here, another important thing. The Nirguna Bhaktas have to struggle by their own self-effort. And the Saguna Bhaktas, responsibility is thrown to God. And he says, I lift them up. So the difference is that if we worship God, Saguna Brahma, then he becomes responsible. If we are worshipping Nirguna, we have to go by our own self-effort. One more point is described here. When will you do that? How much time you will take that? That also is replies that I soon lift them up. So there is no time gap. If their love for me is complete, I lift them immediately. So don't think that this path is a slower path. That is the lesson here. From the ocean of ever-recurring births and deaths, as their mind is wholly attached to me. So their mind should be wholly attached to me, responsibility is thrown on me, I lift them up. Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are both referred to here. So this Nirguna Upasana belongs to the Jnana Yogis. And the Saguna Upasana, it is not only Saguna Upasana, but reaching Nirguna through the Saguna. That is the Bhakti Yoga. Both may be said to have been defined in the above passage. So that Nirguna Upasana is the definition of Jnana Yoga. And the Saguna Upasana is the definition of Bhakti Yoga. Jnana Yoga is grand, it is high philosophy, and almost every human being thinks, curiously enough, that he can surely do everything required of him by philosophy. A man not only does not understand the absolute truth, but when he understands, he feels, I can do it. He cannot understand his capacity, as Shri Krishna has described now. But it is really very difficult to live truly the life of philosophy. We are often apt to run into great dangers in trying to guide our life by philosophy. Because we cannot reach, then we become hypocrites. This world may be said to be divided between persons of demonical nature who think the caretaking of the body to be the be-all and the end-all of existence, and persons of godly nature who realize that the body is simply a means to an end as an instrument intended for the culture of the soul. Asura and Devi. The devil can and indeed does cite the scriptures for his own purpose. So we'll talk of the highest philosophy and we will not be able to act on that. And thus the way of knowledge appears to offer justification to what the bad man does, as much as it offers inducement to what the good man does. So, not properly understood, it is as if supporting the bad man. This is the great danger in Jnana Yoga, but Bhakti Yoga is natural, sweet and gentle. Slowly we are, apparently slowly, but we are surely reaching the goal. The Bhakta does not take such high flights as the Jnana Yogi, and therefore he is not apt to have such big falls. Until the bondages of the soul pass away, it cannot of course be free. So whatever path you take, you have to reach the highest goal, then only you are free. Whatever may be the nature of the path that the religious man takes. So goal is the same, you go in the smoother way, he goes in a difficult way, because he has the capacity for that. Now he is showing the supreme end of love, how it will reach there. Here is a passage showing how, in the case of one of the blessed gopis, the soul binding chains of both merit and demerit were broken. When we perform good deeds, we reap good fruits. We are bound to reap the good fruits. If we do bad deeds, we are bound to reap the bad fruits. Both are bandhanas. Now the gopi through love broke all the bonds that is being described. It is from Vishnu Puran, Swamiji is quoting, Swamiji is translating. The intense pleasure in meditating on God took away the binding effects of our good deeds. Good deeds prompt us to do more good deeds, and they give us joy. Now if we love God, then the maximum joy comes. So it takes care of our good deeds. We are not prone to do good deeds and get joys. So it swallows up the joy of the good deeds, love of God. Then her intense misery of soul in not attaining unto him washed off all her sinful propensities. So when we have some sinful propensities, we suffer. Now because we are not God, that suffering is maximum. And that suffering overshadows or absorbs this suffering. So, without having to undergo good or bad results, by happiness of God's love and by sorrow of God's separation, we get washed both of them. And then she became free. The Sanskrit is tat chinta vipula lada khina punya chaya tatha tada prapti mahat dukkha vilina ashesha pataka. Translation Swamiji is already given. Niruchhasataya muktim gatanya gopakanyaka. So one gopi clearly became free through this. Vishnu Purana. In Bhakti Yoga, the central secret, this is the central secret now, is therefore to know that the various passions and feelings and emotions in the human heart are not wrong in themselves. Only they have to be carefully controlled and given a higher and higher direction. Continuously same thing. That science is required. Until they attain the very highest condition of excellence. The highest direction is that which takes us to God. Every other direction is lower. We find that pleasures and pains are very common and oft recurring feelings in our life. They are coming and going. When a man feels pain because he has not wealth or some such worldly thing, he is giving a wrong direction to the feeling of pain. Still, pain has its uses. Let a man feel pain that he has not reached the highest direction given to the feeling of pain. That he has not reached God, and that pain will be to his salvation. That will lead him to mukti. When you become glad that you have a handful of coins, it is wrong direction given to the feeling of joy. It should be given a higher direction. It must be made to serve the highest ideal. Pleasure in that kind of ideal must surely be our highest joy. The very struggle to get God is joy. This same thing is true of all our other feelings. So joy and sorrow is described, and it says all our feelings. The Bhakta says that not one of them is wrong. He gets hold of them all and points them unfailingly towards God. That is the central secret, and that is the naturalness. So today we stop here, and that beautiful chapter is coming, the forms of love manifestation. I may just tell you that Swamiji has taken this thing from the Shandilya Bhakti Sutras. In the Shandilya Bhakti Sutras, second chapter, first section, 44 Sutra. From there Swamiji has taken this in 2 chapters. This and the next chapter is fully based upon that. That we shall see in the next turn. So today we have seen the renunciation natural, we have seen the direction of love being given to God, and how every purpose is served by that. All our feelings can be directed to God. That is the central secret. We need not go after the Nirgun because we have body consciousness. We will attain Nirgun through the Sagun Bhakti. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.